Eric the Turf Teacher Jones. Oh, yeah! Teaching you life lessons, business strategies, and leadership.
Let's grow together.
Hey everyone, Turf Teacher here. This episode, we discuss applying the correct amount of pesticide. It was hosted on January 10th, 2023, our first Turf Talk Tuesday of 2023. And if you want to join us every Tuesday night, just go to turfteacher.com and click on pesticide webinars. And also for your North Carolina Landscape Contractor Licensing Board CEUs, we will start hosting those on March 1st via Zoom. Check it out, turfteacher.com. And so, again, Happy New Year. It is, the first Turf Talk Tuesday of 2023, January 10th. My nephew's birthday, my uncle's birthday. So, and they're out having a good time, and we're doing some pesticide training. But
well, that's not any good.
this is where I like being, though. I like being with you guys. It's the best time to get our credits while we got some semi-bad weather going on. It was funny. I heard on the weather this morning that we had 8 inches of snow here in Winston-Salem in January of last year. We had 3 major storms that gave us 8 inches. So I'm hoping we can get a little more of that so we can put the plows on the truck. But in the meantime, we're going to talk about applying the correct amount of pesticide. This is good for one credit in L, D, N, and X. And we're basically just going to talk about why it's so important to use the correct amount. And a lot of times I'll ask the question, what's the number one reason we have pesticide failure? And people will say, well, it's because we use too much, we use too little, or what? But can anybody tell me the number one reason we do have a pesticide failure? When we make an application to a client's turf grass, to their ornamental shrubs, and we do not kill or suppress the target pest, what is the number one reason?
Misidentification.
Misidentification of the pest. 100% right, Mr. Carson. Good deal. Good deal. And another question that I don't know if there's really a right or wrong answer, and they both be right. But do you think it's more detrimental to our checkbook if we apply too much pesticide or too little, and why?
Both.
It is, exactly. And why is that?
If you don't apply enough, you have to reapply.
Yep.
And if you apply too much, you're spending more money to kill the same thing you could kill with the right amount.
Yep. And there may be damage to our turf. There may be damage to our shrubs that we've sprayed. We may have to be redoing the landscape. And like you said, if we don't suppress or kill the target pest, we've got to send somebody out there on our dime and to make another application. And typically, what do our technicians do? What do our lawn care technicians do if they've got to go back to the property twice? They're going to throw a little extra in there. So they're going to make sure they get the pest this time, because they don't want to have to come back to Miss Smith's yard. They don't want to go back to Miss Johnson's yard. They want to do it. And they're applying too much again. So both answers 100% right. And that's why we apply the correct amount of pesticide. And I heard a long time ago, if y'all watched the national championship game last night, which wasn't much of a game, but you know why Georgia won? It was because they're a turf grass school, right? You know, all the ag schools are real good in football. But I heard that they did a study at the university that says the perfect lawn, quarter-acre lawn, which when we say perfect, that means weed-free, mowed at the correct height, gets the correct amount of water, gets the correct amount of fertility, and has no infestations of any pests, just true healthy grass, that turf grass could take out more carbon dioxide than the family of 4 can put in it. And so that's some good stuff to tell your clients that are like, hey, you're putting all these chemicals out and you're hurting the environment. No, we're actually bettering the environment by putting out exactly what is needed. There's too many guys and gals out there applying the incorrect amount, which is where we get our bad rap. And unfortunately, as lawn care, applicators, we're going to get criticized because we do have tanks in our trucks and backpack sprayers. And so this is why we have to really focus on using just the correct amount of pesticide. So let's get started with that and jump into it. To use pesticide successfully, you must apply the correct amount of pesticide over the target area in a uniform way. Errors in rate or uniformity may waste money, injure our plants, damage the environment, fail to control the pest, and result in fines for illegal application. Remember, it's illegal to apply too much. We're only supposed to use exactly what we need. In every situation, you should know rather than guess whether you're applying the correct amount of pesticide. Now, we got to be honest with ourselves. Do we calibrate our equipment every single morning before we go out?
No.
We don't, do we? And why don't we? Is it the time? We're always in a rush. We're kind of in a panic. We're trying to get the other crews out, and we got our technicians over there, and we're like, hey, here's your route sheets, or yeah, go on and get out there and get the stuff put out. But I want to do the math. I want to seriously sit down and kind of calculate if our technicians were applying, pesticides, fertility, whatever they're doing that day, what is the difference in money we're spending? That 20 minutes for them to spend every morning calibrating their equipment, getting it set up right, or going out with it not calibrated, and how much more are they wasting? I would love to see the numbers on that. So we have to measure our treatment area. And there's all kinds of tools out there that we can use to measure it. If we have small sites, which I love small turf grass areas. I love lawns that are like 8,000 square feet and less. It's just our little niche. Larger sites, you may have to measure it in acres. And when we're measuring in acres, mistakes are very costly. And with the cost of fertilizer and the cost of pesticides now, even our smaller sites, if we're using too much, we are spending way more money than we need to. And we need to subtract out the areas that are not treated. How are you guys actually measuring? Are you guys using any type of software? Are you using Google Earth? Are you using some of the lawn suites? How are you guys measuring your properties? Because that should be prevalent on our list to do. If somebody calls, and yes, I understand if we're in the same neighborhood and we're already treating 20 lawns and they are within, a certain number of square feet, in size, we could probably estimate any other yard in that property. But here in Winston-Salem, we have issues where we've got some flat lawns in the same neighborhood, and then we've got some lawns that are like on a steep. Totally different situation there. But how are you guys measuring your lawns?
Hand wheel.
You're doing the hand wheel, which,
Yep.
yeah, I mean, it's a good way to do it. Not going to have to worry about a battery going dead or anything like that, and get it out, measure it really quick. Now, I picked up a little thing called this. I don't know if you guys can see it. It's called Mosure. They do not sponsor me or anything like this, but when I saw this pop up on a YouTube ad, I was like, I got to get that thing. And I ordered it. And this, for the lawn care technician, for the landscape contractor, anybody that is measuring properties, this is the best thing to have.
How do you spell that?
Moasure, Mosure. They're British. And I got this thing a couple of years ago, and I use it every day. I can't figure out how to turn it off, but I can figure out how to use it. It blinks all the time. And, but I charge it up every night because we use it every single day. Best thing I ever bought. Best thing I ever bought. And I actually met the guys up at Equipment Expo in Kentucky this past year, and stopped by their booth and stuff. And they all have that British accent. It was great just talking with them. But man, they have come up with a tool that construction, landscape, everybody is using. It's a good thing to have.
Can
But
you
like I
take it out
said,
and show it to us?
yes. It's a little tape measure.
Oh, okay.
just a little, and what it does is it connects to your phone. And so you can go and you'll place it like, here's your land or your turf. You just pick it up and you do it like every 3 feet. The best thing about it, it'll generate a PDF of the property.
Like a grid.
With a grid.
Okay.
And then it'll also produce it in DWG for like AutoCAD if you're doing design work.
Neat.
So it is awesome. And so
Yeah.
I always, if I use something and I love it, I tell everybody about it, because these guys have helped me save a bunch of time and money. Can go out and measure a property really, really quick.
Well, a lot of my properties are like either tight yards or some high-end properties in downtown Raleigh where we use the original plat map and then measuring wheel because it's got such peculiar little areas.
Yep.
So, yeah, but I think that's great. Thank you for sharing that.
Yes, ma'am. If you do order it, make sure you get the stick. That way you don't have to bend down and lay this on the ground. It's actually got like a tripod, like a monopod that you could just do that and not have to bend over. I'm getting old and my back hurt, so I had to get that. All right, basic geometry. And y'all won't believe this, but in the college where I teach, we get students every single day that have totally forgot geometry. And we think when we take geometry in 9th or 10th grade in high school, we're like, we're not ever going to use this stuff ever again. But we do in lawn care. We're measuring out our properties. And the best thing to do is to cut the lawn into sections that we can easily identify, whether it's a circle, rectangle, square, triangle, because we have those formulas to calculate our square footage. Now, this typically is a golf course hole. And so they're actually dividing the fairway up into the rectangle. They've got the circle for like the tee box or the actual hole. And so they're measuring this whole thing and they're dividing it into the sections that they know. Circle, the radius, 3.14 times pi, r squared, the radius squared. And pi is your 3.14. Rectangle is just width times length. Triangle is your base times your height divided by 2. Your trapezoid is your A plus B divided by 2 times your height. And you measure these things out, and you do the calculations, and look, we've got almost an acre, 5,000 square feet would have an acre taken up this golf course. So divide your properties into these geometric shapes if you have to, and get the correct size of our lawns. And when we do that, guys, we should know exactly how many square feet of turf we're treating each year. Like right now is the time to get geared up. We're probably, most of you guys are probably doing soil test. You're getting out lime. Once you get those results back, you're getting ready to make your first round here in February. But you need to know exactly how many square feet of turf you're treating. You order your product. And again, you don't want to order too much. You definitely don't want to order too less. You want to have just the right amount. And calibration, we already talked about that. Are we doing it every single morning? Probably not, but we should. It is the process of measuring your output and adjusting your equipment to apply the right amount of pesticide to the target area. It needs to be completed by the individual making the application. So us, I have to have my hands on everything. Like sometimes I've got to learn to let go and let my guys do this themselves, because they're the ones making the application. If I've got a guy that's 6'2", and I'm 5'10", if I'm calibrating his equipment, what do you think's happening if he goes out there and uses the equipment I've calibrated? His pace is going to be a lot faster. Mine's a little bit slower. Your taller people are going to be moving a lot faster. Your shorter people are going to move, a lot slower. And the slower you go, the more pesticides you apply. The faster you're going, the less you apply. So you've got to calibrate it for that individual making the applications needs to do it. And if you have properly calibrated equipment, it will deliver the right amount and it will apply it uniformly. The label will tell you the application rate. This is one thing that we're going to have to study. And we always kind of joke around with each other. I don't know if you guys know Matt Martin, good friend of mine. He's a UT graduate. big into turf grass, big into it. And he's like, Eric, we got to read our pesticide labels all the time. And the best thing about having these cell phones with us all the time is we can Google it, we can download these labels, but we need to read it. While we're laying in bed, watching what the wife wants to watch on TV, I'm sitting there reading pesticide labels. Because I don't care about what she's watching, and I need to be updated on what our guys are putting out. And you need to read them every single season. You don't know what's changed, or you just need to brush up on what's going out there. And your technicians need to read these labels. If you ever get pulled over by the inspectors, or they come up to one of your properties and they're like, hey, what are you spraying? What's your rate? How much is in the truck? You're going to sound a whole lot more prepared if you can quote this stuff off of your label, and they're going to less likely leave you alone. But examples, we're going to see 4 ounces per 1,000 square feet, see per 1,000 square feet a lot on these labels, but this is product per area. We're going to see 3 ounces per gallon. This is product per volume. And we may see a 2% solution, which is percent solution mixed with water. And we'll see examples of this here shortly. So when to calibrate? Before using it the first time each year, yes, we're getting out that equipment. It needs to be done if we're going to put it out on the road, but it needs to be done every day. When changing our type of pesticide, when changing the rate and speed at which it's applied, and when equipment is moved from one site to another. And this is what drives me a little crazy. And I've asked, the inspectors this too. I'm like, why do we need to do it from one site to another? Well, think about it. If we're putting that rotary spreader on the back of the truck, it's getting out of calibration the fastest of any piece of equipment we have. Going over speed bumps, guys hitting the curbs, those things just get out of calibration quickly. And so if you are doing a lot of traveling, it may need to be done. I don't think that's possible. You can't do it from, one neighbor's yard to the next, but if you are moving, across town, you may want to find an area where you can recalibrate that rotary spreader. Can anybody else tell me when there's some other times we may need to recalibrate? It may not be a problem right now, but think about those May days, those days in June, September.
Heat.
The heat, exactly. And what does that do? How does that affect our calibration?
Slows people down as they're walking.
Exactly. It slows the technicians down. They're real, energetic in the morning. They're at their normal walking pace, but as the day progresses and the temperature rises, they're going to eat lunch. They're going to get their belly full. They are slowing down tremendously. And so they may need to recalibrate at lunch, because when they're slowing down, is the product applications increasing or decreasing?
Increasing.
It's increasing. They're putting out more product than needed. They're wasting. And you've got it calculated or how much they're going to have on their truck that day. And when they're coming back at 2 o'clock, they're like, hey, boss, I've ran out of fertilizer. You're like, what? Well, there again, they should have calibrated. They slowed down and they used more product than needed. The normal walking speed, we're, 2 to 3 miles an hour walking. If we're using one of these little ride-on spreaders, we're going to be around 4 to 6 miles per hour. And that, can ease up, the load on your technicians. You want them to be able to rest and get more done. Some of your ride-on spreaders would actually be a whole lot better. Now, also, can anybody tell me else another situation we may want to calibrate? And I kind of touched base on it just here a few minutes ago. I'm in Winston-Salem, kind of central Piedmont area. So I've got neighborhoods side by side that are completely flat, and then some yards that are on inclines. I'm walking a whole lot faster on the flat turf.
Yeah.
When I'm pushing uphill or going downhill, too fast, uphill, too slow. So I try to schedule our routes where we do all the flat yards in one day, and then we're going to move to the steeper properties the next day. You gotta put them together so your guys are at that speed that morning. or, you know, when they calibrate that morning, they're going to be at that same speed all day long. So at your shop, technically you're going to need a flat area and you're going to need a hilly area that they can calibrate their rotary spreaders and their hoses. Now with handhelds and backpack, I am a firm believer in pushing out my fertility and using a backpack for spot treatments, because if somebody's on your lawn care program, they're supposed to have a pretty decent lawn. They shouldn't be covered in weeds. You know, you shouldn't have to mix a tank full of herbicide to broadcast over the entire property. You should only have to do spot spraying after they've been on your lawn care program for a little bit. But your backpacks are compressed air up to 30 PSI. The pressure drops as the solution is sprayed. And if the sprayer has a gauge, try to keep it within 10 PSI of the initial pressure. When calibrating by area, if you're applying a pesticide to an area measured in square feet, calibrate the sprayer by staking out 1,000 square foot test plot. Example, 20 by 50 on a surface similar to the treatment site. So basically they're saying if it's flat ground, have a flat area to do it. I like having a gravel, you know, lots or a parking lot somewhere that's got, you know, already got the flags up or it's painted on there, our 10 or our 20 by 50. That way the guys can go over there and do it really, really quick. They don't have to take the time measuring. You have a designated area, they can calibrate a whole lot faster and quicker. So we'll fill the sprayer tank half full with water, no pesticide. The only piece of equipment that we do use the product we're applying would be our granular spreaders. When we're using our sprayers, we're just going to use water. But we maintain the pump pressure that we will use during the application. We record the number of seconds it takes to spray the test plot evenly while walking at a comfortable, steady pace. It is a good idea to spray the test plot 2 or 3 times and figure the average time. Use the average with our calculations. Step 2, we're going to stand still and spray into a container for the average time found in step 1. The number of ounces collected equals the amount of spray delivered to 1,000 square feet. And with this number, you can calculate the amount of pesticide and water needed to treat the target area. And now we get into some fun problems. And so we have a situation where we're going to apply a herbicide to a lawn that's 40 feet by 65 feet. Small area, very small area. The labeled application rate is 2 ounces of herbicide are to be mixed with a sufficient amount of water to treat 1,000 square feet. Remember this, sufficient amount of water. A lot of the times we are using a diluted mix, and I'll tell you why here in a second. But we're going to express this in 2 ounces per 1,000 square feet. The area to be treated is 40 times 65, 2,600 square feet. The test plot to cover 1,000 square feet was 80 seconds. The amount of water collected in 80 seconds was 57 ounces. So our sprayer output was 57 ounces per 1,000 square feet. To determine the total spray mixture needed, remember, this is total spray mixture, not the amount of pesticide, not the amount of water, total spray mixture. We multiply the target area by the sprayer output. 2,600 square feet times 57 ounces divided by 1,000 square feet is our 148,200 divided by 1,000. We need 148.2 ounces. We round off to 148. Why do we not round up to 149?
Listen,
What are we doing? We're rounding up. We're applying too much. We're using more than needed, which is illegal, and we're wasting money. And it's going to be hard to find 0.2 ounces in our cups, our tip and pours. So again, there it's just explaining how to do it. And so 2, determine the amount of herbicide needed, multiply the target area by the labeled application rate. 2,600 square feet times 2 ounces per 1,000 equals 5,200 ounces divided by 1,000. We need 5.2 ounces of herbicide. And so to treat the target area, a little more than 5 ounces of herbicide should be added to 143 ounces of water. Well, we just rounded off to 148. Why are we only using 143 ounces of water?
Because you got 5 ounces of herbicide.
Exactly. Most people don't catch that. They're going to put in 148 ounces and then they're going to dump 5 ounces of herbicide. They've got a diluted mixture. You have to subtract out the amount of herbicide from the total amount of water to get our total spray mixture. And because there's 128 ounces in a gallon, this will mean adding 5 ounces of herbicide to 1.1 gallon of water, the 143 divided by 128. And we have a successful application by taking our time and doing the calibration on that backpack. And it probably took no more than 5 minutes maybe to calibrate that backpack sprayer. When we're going to calibrate when using it for volume, we're going to spray to wet or paint a plant with a spray paint. So basically we're going to spray some shrubs. You know, we got some insects on azaleas or whatever. We're going to do it this way. We're going to add water, no pesticide again, to the tank, and we're going to pressurize it, then record the number of seconds it takes to spray a representative plant thoroughly. So we're going to pick one and we're going to spray it, just water. We're going to spray the water into a container for the length of time. Use this number to calculate the amount of water and product needed. And math problem number 2. Apply an insecticide to 18 azaleas in a plant bed. The labeled rate is 3 ounces of insecticide per gallon of water. The number of plants to treat is 18. The seconds to spray one average plant was 12. The amount of water collected in 12 seconds is 10 ounces. So to determine the total spray mixture needed, multiply the total number of plants to treat the amount of water collected to treat the one plant. 18 times 10 is 180 ounces. Convert it to gallons. 180 divided by 128, we need 1.4 gallons total spray mixture. To determine the amount of insecticide needed, multiply the label rate by the total spray mixture of 3 ounces per gallon times 1.4. We need 4.2 ounces. So add a little more than 4 ounces of insecticide to 176 ounces. Again, the 180 minus 4 to treat the 18 azaleas. And people say, well, Eric, do I really need to take the time to do that? Are we really losing a lot of money spraying 18 azaleas? Probably not. But what are we risking in a situation like this if we didn't calibrate that equipment?
Applying too much chemical.
Yes.
Or too little.
And why is that, Melissa?
Because if you don't know how much you're applying and at what rate, you may not suppress the insects, or you may actually coat the plants with too much chemical and cause injury.
Yes. Yes. And we may have to go back because Miss Smith's unhappy.
Yes.
If we have that diluted mixture, if we have the diluted mixture and didn't really subtract out the amount, we're going to have to go back. We could damage the azaleas. We're going to put too much out. It's a lot of situations that could go wrong here. And with 18 azaleas, I'm not really worried about my checkbook, but I am worried about having to replace those azaleas or losing the customer that spends, thousands of dollars with us each year. We've got to take the time to do this. And unfortunately, I'm bad for it too. I'm always in a rush. I'm always in a rush to get to the next job, rush to do the next estimate. We got to slow down when it comes to calibration.
My phone.
So here's one. We're going to mix 3 gallons of a 2% pesticide solution in water. We convert the 2% to a decimal. 2 divided by 100 is 0.02. To determine the number of ounces of pesticide needed per gallon, we multiply the rate per gallon, which is 0.02, by 128. This is ounces in a gallon. 0.02 times 128 is 2.6 ounces.
On the 3 dots.
So to determine the amount of pesticide needed, multiply the amount of pesticide per gallon. For our total spray mixture, 2.6 per gallon times 3, we need 7.8 ounces. So mix a little less than 8 ounces of pesticide with slightly less than 3 gallons of water to give us our 2% solution. Now, some nozzle knowledge. Just basic stuff. Here we got some charts. We've got the nozzle body. The diaphragm, always be careful with that. These guys are going to freeze and bust. When we have these spring days, when we're out spraying and we come in, and if we're not parking our equipment or if we don't clean them out, because cleaning our equipment every day is just as important as calibrating them every day. You're going to have water in the tanks. These diaphragms are going to freeze and bust, and you're going to be replacing a bunch of nozzles. Or you can keep them inside, inside your shop or whatever. Some common nozzle types that we use: solid cone, standard flat, the hollow cone, and then figure 10-6 is just spraying uniformity. There is going to be some overlap with our nozzles. That way we get the coverage that we're needing. So with our spray guns, pulling the hose off the truck, not my favorite thing to do. Like I said, I'd much rather grab my backpack and do the spot treatments. A lot of your bigger chemical companies say that they want to mix everything in one spray tank because it's cheaper to have the technician walk over the lawn one time versus pushing out the fertility and then going and grabbing the backpack or the hose and just spot spraying. That may be the case, or it may not, but with the cost and chemicals keep going up, the less chemical use, the better off you are. And plus, this whole thing of using less chemical, what are people's philosophy on this now? Our customers, I mean, we work for customers that will not let us spray anything on their property. No Roundup, they want nothing. Everything has to be, no chemicals whatsoever.
Mhm.
And we've lost some clients because of that. And then we're still working with some clients that they're hand pulling their own weeds. They don't want any fertility on their turf. They're just that type of a customer. But when people don't want that, what is another service that we can sell? And you was probably getting ready to say it, Melissa. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Oh, I was going to say, you've got alternatives. You've got organic alternatives if you have a client that doesn't want to use things like neonicotinoids or dealing with bees. You've got alternatives. They just don't have the longevity, or you have to think outside the box.
Yep. And what kind of terminology would we call these practices?
We say organic treatment. So
Okay.
we typically are using things that are alternatives that are not going to target the bee population, not going to be dangerous for pets or small children. And we're going to use things that will be food safe for things like vegetables and herbs.
Mm-hmm. And have you ever heard the term integrated pest management?
Yes.
And you start talking that terminology to some of these clients and you've got them hooked. They're going to pay for this because there are clients that just, they're scared to death of Roundup. And, I can't blame them. Look at the stuff they see on TV all the time about it. But let's say we're pulling off our spray gun. We're pulling the hose off the truck. What we need to do is divide 1,000 square feet by our swath width to determine the distance of the test course. This will be a little easier to understand here in a few. Spray the test course with water using the technique you will use for your application. Begin spraying just before you enter the course. Record the number of seconds to spray the test course. Average it 3 times. Then spray in the bucket the number of seconds from step 3. Measure and convert to gallons. The amount collected is equivalent to the spray gun output per 1,000 square feet. If we're doing it for acres, we'll multiply by our factor of 43.56. And so here we're doing the first part of it. For a swath width of 5 feet, just left to right, 2.5 feet, either way, we're going to mark a test course that is 200 feet long. 1,000 square feet divided by 5, we need that test course of 200 feet. The average time in seconds to spray this test course was 77, 79, 78, which averaged 78. The gallon sprayed into a bucket in 78 seconds was 5.25. The output is 5.25 gallons per 1,000 square feet or 228.7 gallons per acre. The 5.25 times our 43.56. And note, if your calibration output is not within 5% of the label rate, adjust your walking speed, the nozzle, or the pressure and recalibrate until it's within the 5%. Boom sprayers, hydraulic sprayers that produce pressures up to 500 PSI. The application rates can vary widely, and some of the materials are applied at a rate of 1 quart per 1,000 square feet, while others may be applied at 100 gallons or more per acre. The height of the nozzle above the ground determines the swath width or the effective sprayed area per nozzle. The height is usually anywhere from 14 to 18 inches above the surface area. Again, overlappage, good to have. So pre-calibration check with our spray pattern. We're going to check all components. We're going to clean them, make sure we have the correct type. We'll clean the nozzles and screens with a soapy water and soft brush, rinse the spray tank and partially fill with clean water, pressurize the sprayer, and flush our hoses and our boom. Reattach the nozzle tips and spray water on the paved surface. Again, we got our coverage, 50% overlap. What about these streaks in the pattern shown here? This is going to be an issue with nozzle height, alignment, or output. And we're going to have some bad spots in our turf grass to keep doing this.
I've got a question.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm not a farmer, but when you're dealing on the smaller scale with drift, we're very careful about not spraying when there's higher wind speeds. But at the same time, I noticed that a lot of other companies, especially some of the larger companies, don't consider drift when they're applying things like mosquito control, which is very concerning for neighboring yards.
Yes.
Can you mention something about that?
Well, I know you can. I mean, drift is a big thing, and there's a lot of court cases out there involving that. A friend of mine who is a strawberry farmer and a tobacco farmer, and the neighboring farmer sprayed their fields, and he went out. And the friend of mine, he ran out there and he's like, "Look, can you stop spraying?" He said, "We've got stuff out here." He said, "It is way too windy to be spraying." And the drift got over onto his property and got into the intake on the greenhouses and killed his entire crop of greenhouse tomatoes. He sued him, went to court, and he won. So it's one of these situations, and I call them yahoos. They're going to go out and they're going to do this stuff, and the only thing we can do is report them to our inspectors. Luckily here in our area, we're seeing a lot of new inspectors that are big on this stuff. A lot of the old school guys have retired, and we're getting fresh blood in there, and I think these agents have a lot to prove to themselves and everyone in the industry, and so they're out checking this stuff. The only problem is your agents are covering multiple counties, and so if you ever need them, they may be 2 counties away that day.
I think one of the problems I find that's really disturbing is people that sell these, what we consider controlled chemicals or controlled pesticides, that they're still putting them out without a license.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you get into these issues of drift or not knowing how lethal some of these applications are, like our local agri supply and Tractor Supply sells RM43, which will kill cows. I mean, it's very strong. That concerns me that people are applying these chemicals without a license, and they're being sold without a license. And it's really tough to know how far of a buffer line they're giving from a property line to make sure we're still safe.
Yeah. Well, and I know that, Tractor Supply and all these places sell this stuff, but the reason they're selling them is because they're not restricted use pesticides. You have to have a license to purchase a restricted use pesticide. And that's an EPA process, and it takes several years for them to determine whether or not the pesticide should be a restricted use or general use pesticide. And so a lot of the stuff that these homeowners and yahoos are buying are general use pesticides, and they may have high toxicity rates. So whether or not they're restricted it's based on a number of factors, not just the toxicity level and what it'll kill. And unfortunately in lawn care, like you said, all your supply houses are going to sell to anybody and everybody, except if it is a restricted use pesticide. They have to document it. They have to write down your license number. And if it's a 2.5 gallon jug of it, they have to keep track of every restricted use pesticide that they do sell. But like you said, with drift, I mean, people call me every day. Hey, Eric, is it too hot to spray? I'm like, dude, we got 10-mile-an-hour winds, 20-mile-an-hour winds. Why are you worried about the heat? If there's any indication of wind blowing, hey guys, get back to the shop, or, let's go throw out granular stuff. We're not going to be doing any spraying. But I don't know what the answer is, Melissa, to get these guys, other than if it's affecting your farm, you have to document it, take pictures of them making the applications, print off a weather report, and you're just going to have to take them to court and sue them for damages done to your properties.
I just think one of the ones that I see that's really disturbing is the mosquito spray, because the drift is so bad and they don't care. They just spray whether it's, hot, cold, wind blowing or not. And that really concerns me. So,
and from my understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, guys, to apply the mosquito stuff, you're supposed to have a public health license.
That's correct.
That's correct. So, and these guys don't even have ornamentals and turf. They're getting into these mosquito businesses because there's franchises and it's so easy to get into the mosquito business, and people are, scared to death of mosquitoes. And so the work is there. I know a guy, I see him just about every day in our community. I know for a fact he does not have a pesticide license, and yet he's driving around in a mosquito control truck and advertising for mosquitoes. And it's one of those situations where, you got to call your inspectors. And the sad thing is, and I know if you turn somebody in with not having a landscape contractor license, they have to notify the individual that turned them in. They're like, we got a complaint from Eric Jones that Melissa Radford is practicing landscape contracting without a license. So people don't want to turn people in if they're afraid that they're going to be, thrown under the bus for the ones turning them in. So do you have a small farm, Melissa, or a farm in your area? And is that happening to you, or?
I have clients that have had it happen. I've personally had it happen in my home. We do have farmland in another location, but my actual sod farmer also, that I get most of my sod from down in Willow Spring, he lives in Anger, and he had the neighbor spray 2,4-D and destroy his entire spring and summer garden, which he was just irate. And I personally had a neighbor that had a mosquito spray application done, and it destroyed all of my green onions and tomatoes and everything that I had in my yard. I had to throw them out because the drift was so bad. So I will just say that it's negligence everywhere, and it's just lack of diligence and lack of teaching and mentoring. Even if you're spraying under someone else's license, you need to understand the rules and the big red flags on when you need to be careful and when you need to avoid. When the guy was spraying that day here, I couldn't even let my dogs out next door for 2 hours because it was so toxic that I was coughing when I walked outside, even in my car. So a lot of these folks just don't understand wind or toxicity. And I think that is a teaching moment. Yeah.
Well, and, drift can be several miles down the road.
Yes.
It's like, and how do we pinpoint the source? If it's quarter mile down the road that somebody's making an application, and we do have these winds, and it comes to your garden, it comes to your greenhouses, we're not even going to know how it's, who or who did it.
Well, and they say that good fences make good neighbors, but a lot of these small yards, I'm in Nightdale, or I service a lot of Raleigh and North Raleigh, Wake Forest, Clayton, Nightdale, but there's a lot of houses like in Wendell Falls that are 0.12 for the lots.
Yeah.
And so if you're spraying your yard and you don't know what you're doing, you're actually spraying the neighbor's yard.
Yeah. On both sides.
That's very scary. And then you're getting into, could you hurt animals and small children? So I think that's where we really need to be more conscientious with these smaller postage stamp lots about knowing what is dangerous.
It is. Yeah.
Because if you're eating herbs, just like I had to throw out I called my chemical guy and just kind of talked it over with him. We're good friends, and said, what do you think? And he's like, throw it all out. And I was like, are you serious? He's like, it's dangerous to eat. The drift was way too heavy. Just throw it all out. You don't need to even consider it. And it broke my heart, but you have to be realistic. You don't want to get your family sick.
Yep. Well, and again, and this goes back to me saying, I like pushing out my food and spot spraying with a backpack sprayer my weeds. And the backpack sprayer is just not going to build up enough pressure to really create a whole lot of drift. The problem is these guys with the big tank sprayers on the back of their truck, they got the new truck, they want to get the new sprayer, and they're out spraying everything. And they don't even know how to control. They've got the wrong gun on the hose anyway. We're not supposed to have these high pressure spray guns. We're supposed to have like a shower head almost.
A lot of these mosquito guys are actually using foggers from backpack sprayers with blowers, and it's high winds. And they're not considering the wind. They're just doing their list. And then they don't realize they're not just fogging that 1 yard. They're fogging 4 or 5 yards down the way. So that's just, I think, lack of education and teaching.
Yeah. And they'll eventually catch up with these mosquito guys and get them for not even having a license, because, I'd say 50% or more do not have any type of license. And they've got to have the public health. So good point. And I wish there was, more of what we can do. And again, like I said, that's what gives us a bad rap in the lawn care industry. The individuals that are licensed, that go through the training, the certification, maintain their license, get their CEUs. It's hard on us to, defend ourselves in the general public, because they think we're just like everybody else that's out there doing improper practices. So I don't know, but good conversation. Thank you for bringing that up. And so we got a few more minutes left. I want to kind of finish up with the broom sprayers here. Again, we're going to, with the container analysis, catch the output from each nozzle for 20 seconds, add the amounts and divide by the number of nozzles for the average output. And if the output is 10% above or below, average and replace the nozzle. Repeat step 1 and use new results for the new average in steps 2 and 3. And this chart right here is going to definitely show us what we're talking about there. So we're going to do 2 output tests, because the first one we failed. We have 8 nozzles on our boom sprayer, and we've collected for number 1, 16 ounces, number 2, 12, number 3, 15, number 4 was 16, nozzle number 5 was 16 ounces, 6 was 15, 7 was 14, and number 8 was 19. And so we're looking at differences of all the way from 12 to 19. That's not good. That's not good. We can almost tell right there, hey, we're going to have to recheck some of these nozzles or replace them. So we add them up. The average is 15.4. We have 123 divided by 8. And so our acceptable range is minus the percentage, the 10%. So 10% of 15.4, we're going to add and subtract 1.54. So we're going to have that acceptable range of 13.9 to 16.9. So that's going to kick out nozzle number 2, and it's going to kick out nozzle number 8. And then we're going to have to replace them and do our output test again. This time we're at 15, 16, 15, 16, 16, 15, 15, 17. We're right on track right there. That 17, I'd rather see it at 16. But if we do the math, we have an acceptable range of 1.56 after doing the average. So 14 to 17.2. And that number 8 just sneaks in with that. So the output from all these nozzles are in the acceptable range. And once that takes place, we measure our ground speed. We mark a 200-foot course on a site that is typical of the surface and soil conditions of the area to be sprayed. We fill the tank half full. We test which gear and RPM will allow the sprayer to maintain pressure on nozzles between a constant of 3 to 5 miles per hour. And we drive the sprayer on a 200-foot course 3 times. We start far enough away to reach speed before the first marker. And so we're getting it. Our miles per hour is our distance. Feet times 60 divided by the average time in seconds times 88. Test runs in time seconds were 31.5, 30.3, and 29.2. We add those together, divide by 3. We have an average of 30.3. So our miles per hour would be our 200 feet times 60 divided by our 30.3 seconds times 88. We need to be driving the boom sprayer at 4.5 miles per hour. And so we collect our output, collect for 1 minute or 30 seconds times 2, divide the number of ounces per minute by 128 to find gallons per minute. Measure the distance in inches between the tips of the adjacent nozzles. This is your swath width, and determine the sprayer output in gallons per acre by inserting the values from step 2 and 3 and the miles per hour from your test score in the following formula. And it is our last math problem that we're going to see here in the course, the class. Gallons per acre is gallons per minute times 5,940, our constant, divided by our miles per hour times W, which is our swath width.
Oh.
So we're going to mix a pesticide with water to treat 2.5 acres using a boom sprayer. You already know that, the label rate is 5 pints per acre. We were reading that in the bed last night before the day's job. So 5 pints per acre and a spray volume of 30 gallons per acre. Our miles per hour after doing our test course was 4.5. Our nozzle spacing width is 20 inches. Our average nozzle output was 56 ounces per minute, or 0.44 gallons per minute. 56 divided by the 128. So determine our sprayer output in gallons per acre. It's 0.44 times 5,940 divided by our miles per hour times our swath width gives us 29. This output is within 5% of the labeled gallons per acre. We have 30 plus or minus the 1.5, so no adjustment is needed. If you add to 30, we could do up to 28.5 through 31.5. And so we're falling right in there with our 29. So to determine the total spray mixture needed, multiply the target area by the sprayer output, 2.5 acres times 29 gallons per acre for 72.5 gallons. To determine the amount of pesticide needed, multiply our target area by the labeled rate, 2.5 acres times 5 pints per acre gives us 12.5 pints. So to treat the 2.5 acres, we add 12.5 pints of pesticide to 70.9 gallons of water. We're subtracting out from the 72.5. And so we're able to do that job. If we're going to make some adjustments, calibration for the boom sprayer, if your sprayer's output is not within 5% of the GPA on the label recommendation, adjust the pressure, speed, or nozzles according to table 10.2, which is here. 5 to 10% increase the pressure to deliver more spray, or decrease pressure to deliver it, less of it. If it's between 10 and 25%, adjust your travel speed. If measured outputs from the label GPA are more than 25%, change your nozzles and repeat your pre-calibration check and calibration process. And so, guys, that kind of wraps up the course. You know, we talked about applying the correct amount. Do you have any comments, questions, or concerns? There's great conversation in there from you guys. Any more comments, concerns? Make fun of me, however you want to do it.
Here's a comment. So on some herbicides, the rate per 1,000 square feet is like 0.025 or 0.0225. What are you using to measure that with?
It's in your liquid, right?
Yes, liquid.
And it's per 1,000 square feet. Well,
I was going to try to pull one up right quick, just to give you an idea.
Should we just maybe do it for 5,000 square feet and multiply it times 5?
Yeah, I guess my question is what are you
measuring?
what are you physically using to measure with?
Yeah,
I guess you could convert it to grams or
yeah,
not grams. That'd be
Milliliters.
Milliliters.
because I always kind of go back to putting out some of your sledgehammer and stuff where you got that little tiny spoon.
Yeah.
Or
you know,
certainty, it has the small spoon, which is already calibrated for you to keep you from making as many errors. So those things are great.
Yeah, I was trying to find it here. Hang on a minute. Specimen label. There we go. Okay. So this is for blindside. And if I can find a rate here. Right when you want to find it, you can't find anything.
that's typical, ain't it?
Okay, so here we go. So for cool season grasses,
Mhm.
ounces per 1,000 square feet, 0.075 to
0.0.
0.015. So if you had 1,000 square feet of lawn area to spray a small yard, what physically are you going to, they don't give you a container to measure it with.
No, no.
So, you know, I'm trying to figure out, how am I going to measure out 0.075?
0.07. I guess, the east, because none of us have 1,000 square foot lawn. I guess we would figure out what our average lawn is. Like, let's say we have a 10,000 square foot lawn. Do we take 10 times the 0.075 and calibrate it for the 10,000 square feet?
But I would say that
Well, my question is not so much how much material, it's what do you use to measure it with?
my,
Because
my chemical guy has measuring cups you can purchase that look like medicines for like CCs or
The medicine droppers.
yes, and they're easy to use because it actually shows you on there for that particular chemical. Most of them can get them from their manufacturers or from the wholesaler, and they show exactly like what you're supposed to use. And you can ask them if they have some on hand. They get a lot of samples as well, and that's what I do.
It's like it's like giving your kids, your 3-year-old some medicine. You pour it in one of these little things and it's got a cup, almost looks like a little test tube.
yeah,
And then they kind of take a swig of it.
well, blindside is a flowable, and so you got to. I could probably convert that to grams, and I've got a container that would measure grams. That might work better. Yeah. Okay, that's cool.
You're throwing some tough ones out there, Tony.
Hey, I run into it. Do you know I got inspected? I got inspected twice by the same inspector within 2 weeks.
Within 2, and then you probably be 10 years
Well,
before you see him again.
He walked up to me and he said, I'm so, I won't give his name, but I'm so-and-so, it's in Wake County. And I looked at him and said, yeah, how you doing? And he looked at me and said, if I inspected you before? I said, 2 weeks ago. He said, see you later.
Oh, crazy.
At least they're doing their job.
Exactly. Oh, Belva, yes, we do have a landscape contractor prep course. We're about to finish it up and we'll start marketing for that pretty soon.
Are you going to have any other online classes for CEUs for irrigation and landscape contractors, like more than one at a time?
Yeah, I'm starting to, we're going to do those on Wednesday nights starting March 1st.
Oh, okay, good.
And so you'll have, there's, to do all 7 for your landscape contractor. You'll get the 4 business and 3 technical. And
Okay.
I'll start March 1st and I'll do 7 topics, and then I'll start the 7 topics over again and then start them over. So there'll be 3 chances that you'll be able to get each one of those courses via a Zoom webinar like this.
Okay. All right, cool.
And then as soon as the landscape's over, we'll start doing the irrigation classes.
Irrigation.
Yep.
Okay.
Oh, so they don't have them. Belva, you could try like your local community college. Like I use the textbooks at the college I teach at. And one is the NASCLA book. The other is the landscape construction by David Sauter. He writes one specifically for North Carolina. And then there's the Dr. Fair at NC State, Barbara Fair. She writes that horticultural practices book. So those are the 3 main textbooks. And also with the from the licensing board, I highly recommend buying the thumb drive that's got pictures of all the plants. because
I've
those
already passed the plant section.
Okay.
I can't find the book by, I think it's David Sauter, the one for the construction for it is relates to the maps and, you know, stuff like that,
Yeah.
because that's the only two sections I have to take is like the I guess the knowledge
Gotcha.
portion and I'm just trying to, you know, do you know of any other places that will offer like a study guide or anything? Because I'm kind of starting fresh with it.
There's a guy out in the Asheville area. He's an ag agent, and I can't remember his name, but he'll hold like, you know, pesticide schools and stuff too there at their ag center. And I know he had like a prep class for it.
Okay, I'll look them up, but that book for the by Sauter is definitely on back order with no hopes of coming out. So I'm like, am I stuck and can't take the test?
Have you talked to the licensing board?
Yeah, I called them and it was on their website that it was on back order, and I went to the actual distributor for the book and they didn't have it either. And
Gosh.
you know, I was trying to find somebody who has taken it and I'll purchase the book from them.
Yeah. Have you checked like what area do you live in?
Charlotte Concord area.
Have you checked with like, you know, Central Piedmont Community College? Because I know they do a lot of landscape classes down there.
I can check with them.
Yeah. Because we have some in Forsyth Tech bookstore. We have them in the fall semester because that's one of our classes that we use that textbook for.
Well, I might can order from there and then just get them to ship it.
Yep. All right. Cool deal.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other comments, questions, concerns, guys? Do I, Danny?
Nothing, we're all good.
All right. Well, appreciate it, guys. Let me know if you need anything. I'll get this roster uploaded tonight. So you'll see it as soon as it goes through, you'll see it on your license. So check first thing in the morning. You'll see that you've got the one credit in LD, N, and X.
Okay.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
All right.
Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Eric the Turf Teacher Jones. Oh, yeah! Teaching you life lessons, business strategies, and leadership.
Let's grow together.
If you're needing irrigation, landscape, or pesticide credits, check out my website at turfteacher.com. Every Tuesday evening at 7 p.m., we host Turf Talk Tuesday for pesticide credits and have online courses for both irrigation and landscape contractors. There are also several opportunities to get your credits at one of our seminars that we do throughout the southeastern United States and information on our Christmas lighting course. Check it out again at turfteacher.com.